My name is Jane Gehler. I'm the Director of Spiritual Care at llluminus, and llluminus, in its various shapes and forms, has been a part of my life for 29 years. This all started back in 1997. I was a stay-at-home mom, and one day I got a call from the Bishop Milo Luppnow, and Milo Luppnow served on the steering committee back in the 1960s when Marquardt was being built. And he was a resident on the Marquardt campus, and he had been asked to do a fundraising campaign to put the last addition onto our health center here at the Marquardt. And he asked if I would like to help him with that fundraising campaign, just to come in and help with his clerical work, with letters and things like that. And I said, that would be wonderful. I would love to do that. I would have to do that in the mornings, though. I had 2 small children, and my husband taught afternoons and evenings at MATC here in Watertown. And we just worked on those letters, thank you letters when a donation came in, letters going out to different people, Moravians, members of the community here in Watertown. And we did that for a number of months. And then that time was coming to an end, and discovered that the receptionist at that time needed to be on some long-term disability. And so Marquardt asked if I would fill in the mornings again. And so that was in 97, 98, and I did that for a while. Now, what happened was my daughters, who were small, they were born in 93 and 94. So my oldest daughter, Sarah, got to come to Marquardt, like Dad might drop them off for me, and then I would take them from there. And my daughter, Sarah, said, "Mom, I want to come and visit people here." And I said, well, okay. So my daughter Sarah and I did a little volunteer training, and then we would come to the health center here at the Marquardt in Watertown, and we would visit. And they set us up with mostly some older women. And so once a week or so, we would come and we'd have 2 or 3 ladies that we would come and visit. And I remember my daughter, she was like, "Mom, I'm not sure what to say. I mean, she's just this little one." And I said, "Well, you know, lots of people have pictures up in their rooms." I said, "Why don't you ask them to tell you about the people in the pictures?" And so she did, and the residents just loved it. They loved the fact that here's this little girl asking them questions about the people in the pictures, and it was like she maybe had like another grandma, you know. It was so sweet. So then we did that for a few years, and then I started seminary in 2001. And so for a couple of years, it was really hard for me to do anything. There wasn't any volunteering. I was going to school full-time, and I was serving a Moravian church part-time. But once I got through seminary and was settled in my pastorate in London, it was about that time that llluminus started their hospice program. That was about 2006. And so at that time, it was small yet, and the chaplain for the Marquardt, Rick Brewer, he had called a couple of us up and just said, "Would you do some volunteer chaplaincy work?" I said, "Sure." So for a short time, I served as a volunteer hospice chaplain. And I did that for a couple of years. Then in 2007, I moved to a Watertown Moravian church, the Ebenezer Moravian Church. And Ebenezer was part of a group here in Watertown called the Watertown Clergy Roundtable. And as a part of that group, we brought communion services onto the Marquardt campus. We were on like a rotating schedule where we would several times a year come to the Marquardt campus and provide communion services that were open to all people. We did those services at Zinzendorf, which is now Park Ridge, and also at the health center. And then in 2014, I took a call at a different Moravian church in Unionville, Michigan. So I went there. I was there for 4 years. And then in 2018, I accepted the position here at llluminus as the Director of Spiritual Care. I spend a good part of my time right here on the Marquardt campus, though. I organize the worship services, I do Bible studies, I do devotions in all of the areas. I visit with all of the residents. I have that joy and that honor. And so now it's 2026, and it's been 29 years. In addition to my work here on the Marquardt campus, I also support llluminus, and I do that in a couple of ways. I have the honor and the privilege to speak with our orientation classes, and I get to tell them a little bit about spiritual care, why it's so important, and I also have the honor of telling the history of llluminus, starting out with the roots of Marquardt being built in 1969. So I serve llluminus in that way. I also serve llluminus if there have been times over the years when there's been a difficult resident death or even a staff death. And I've been asked to go to the different communities, provide memorial services, or just to sit with the staff as they're processing some of that grief and anger or surprise, whatever it is that they're feeling. Also, Commonheart, Home Health and Hospice. The chaplains work very closely together. So I work with the hospice chaplains. They work with me. Sometimes we'll get a female resident, let's say, that would be more comfortable with a female chaplain. And so their chaplain will say, hey, Jane, would you mind, I mean, I'm visiting them anyway, but would you mind, covering that? And then they just make notations in there that the spiritual care is being done by the campus chaplain. I guess the other thing I would mention is that Marquardt and llluminus have been very open to allowing me to expand in my career. So just a couple of years ago, I did a year-long study online with the Moravian Seminary out in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I got my certificate in spiritual direction. So that just allows me to do the work that I'm doing in even in just a better way. Better ears, better listening, better tools to bring to the work that I do. So I have two favorite scriptures. They were the scriptures I kind of chose for myself as I was starting seminary. And the first one is Matthew 11, 28 through 30. Come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for my burden is easy. And then the second one is from Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. And it is, he who began a good work in you will bring it to fruition on the day of Jesus Christ. And I see that working not just for me, but for all people. We all sometimes feel burdened, and we all don't always know what to do, and we can share that burden with God. And the Philippians passage, it just reminds me that I'm a work in progress. And I'm not perfect, but God gives me a chance every day to do a better job and to serve God. My name is